quick introductions on myself. I'm Bill. I grew up in New York. I live in Boston the past 20-something years. Got here via college, never left. Became a Red Sox fan, a Patriots fan. Left to Queens, New York for the Jets and the Mets, so it was a little bit of an upgrade, but people will call me a trader there. Been in the security space about 20 years. I've changed the lighting on my screen so you don't see as many gray hairs, hopefully. But with that said, predominantly do a lot with SAP. I've done some other stuff. I've done work in both the government sector, both state and federal, as well as private. So a lot of unique scenarios. And I was asked to talk about, and I do talk about this with a lot of my customers, on bring your own device. And it's something you see a lot of lately for a lot of reasons. And, you know, obviously this day and age, anybody who's hired past year or two, you're going to see a lot of that. Predominantly cell phones is the number one thing with regards to this, but more and more companies I'm seeing with laptops. I'll show a couple of other things on what the D is in that device, and really kind of some of the scenarios and why you are protected and why you're not protected is kind of my hope here. Looking at why BYOD, buying everyone a cell phone. Doesn't necessarily work. Now that you're home, a lot of people are using VIOP on their phone systems, which is great. You can connect that to your router and all that stuff. But at the same time, a lot of people are like, yeah, here's my cell phone, just use it. That causes a lot of challenges and a lot of scenarios, both on the data the company that's on there, as well as what rights the company has versus what rights you have as the individual of the owner of that phone. Also, laptops. I see this, most companies still buy their employee a laptop. I don't see too many of those, with the exception of contractors or your consultants or anybody who's on a 1099. They tend to use their own laptops. I do a lot of contract work. It's part of my business, so I tend to see that all the time. Geography, I used to own a company in the Philippines, so trying to get laptops from the US to the Philippines, back and forth, you know, a lot of logistics and timing, both geography and logistics, timing, what could be bought, how it could be bought, taxes bringing it in. We were like, look, buy your own. If you're a large company, you can scale it. Smaller companies usually just have their people buy their own overseas, is what we were seeing a lot of in that case. What is the device? What is the D? And there's a bunch of these stuff, but really phones is the number one. I see people using their own phone, companies having policies for that. We'll talk about what rights you have to monitor the phone, wipe the phone, how you need to manage that. Tablets. A couple of years ago, I had one company where they had the CEO said, I want to do my analytics on a tablet. We said, great, we'll get you one. No, I want to use my tablet. And, you know, a lot of problems with that from a security standpoint, from a monitoring standpoint. At the time, the device didn't really have great security. They've increased over time, but really trying to set that up. And obviously, and of course, what does he do? The individual leaves it on a plane. So we're in all worlds are hurt. So, you know, again, those kind of things. Laptops, I talked about earlier. And the last one here is the USB device. Downloading data, uploading data. On some company laptops, they usually lock that port or constrict that port. Here, if it's your own device, you own it as the individual, you're uploading and downloading things, you tend to see that. What I don't want you to forget about is that cable modem on your desk, or that wireless router that you have yourself connected, your company, your kids. I've got 2 kids. I've got gaming, internet. My wife's working at home. I'm working at home now. I've got capacity going through that thing. So these are the things that are also part of the BYOD that I don't see a lot of my customers, and I've kind of pushed them on this. How do you monitor that? How do you make sure they're patched correctly? How do you keep them up to date? Because I think it's great that you have a VPN, but if I can get into the router, I can get into your laptop. I don't care about your VPN. I've already got you. I'd probably be a little remiss if I didn't talk about this slide. And I speak at a lot of the SAP conferences, and some other security and cybersecurity conferences. And really, this is the Global Risk Report. It's issued every year. It's issued January of the month of the year. It's issued January 2021. And it's really done that last quarter of 20 for the 2021. And if you're familiar with any of the Gartner group charts, top right quadrant, you're like high likelihood, high impact. And so cybersecurity and cyber attacks are always right there. They've always been there. They've always moved around there. But what I usually talk about these days is a change in one of the scenarios. Probably be remiss if I didn't talk about this, being we are here with COVID. It's going away here, hopefully, or at least getting managed. In 2020, which would have been 2019, infectious disease was in a low likelihood, above average impact scenario, the one that says 2020 there. As soon as it came out in 2021, I knew that was going to change, and it went to high likelihood, high impact for 2021. 2022, we may see that come down a little bit, hopefully, but again, some scenarios there are really tough. Biodiversity loss, some of the other things. And this is done by, again, the World Economic Forum. And they also, I recommend, it's a free report, highly recommend to read. They're also the ones who do Davos, so all those famous billionaires who get together in Switzerland for a week. This is the same group that sponsors that. They've had a lot of good stuff and a lot of good impact. And this is done primarily sponsored by a couple of insurance companies, actually, where they do have a lot of academics coming in to kind of looking at some of the things and kind of sets the stage on how they look at the world. Good stuff. But what I usually get a lot of questions on is, Bill, we have a VPN. We should be okay. Our home devices were corrected. We're good. And I said, yes, without VPN, if the VPN technology didn't exist, it's been around for close to 20 plus years, yes, you would be in a world of hurt. Because what it basically does, but I want to make sure we're clear on this, what it basically does is it just basically encrypts your data and hides your data from a point-to-point position, where if I'm on my PC and I'm sending data or communicating with my servers back at the office or back in the cloud now, wherever I am in the world, it basically hides it so people on the internet can't see the data, and it encrypts it so they don't really understand it. It's like a virtual private network is what the call is. However, I've seen in numerous cases that if I can get to your computer, which again is your employee's computer, they own it, it's the BYOD, I can get to that employee's router, that employee's cable modem, router more than cable modem in this case. I can get into your computer, put something there, do something nefarious, and then, okay, I'll just pass myself through in the encryption channel, and it's fine. I've already got it hit on the move to your office. And I usually show people this chart. Basically, for the most part, hacking a home router. You can Google it. Coventry News just put something out. A friend of mine lives there, so I kind of used there as a source. It was just a couple days ago they did it. You ask yourself, when was the last time I updated my router with a patch, a security patch? You know, downloaded and uploaded it. Where did I do it? How did I do it? And then ask yourself, oh, this is how my employees communicate with me. When did they do it, and how did they keep it up to date, and what kind of policies and what kind of things do I need there? And a quick search will show you that. And if you really want to get one better, there's a website for that, right? Hey, you want to know what the default passwords and the router passwords are? Sure, no problem. And I know your neighbors break into most of them. You know, just some crazy stuff there. Let's talk about the policy. A lot of customers are saying, hey, you know, my customers say, hey, we need something, we need a thing. And what I tell them is there's two components to this. I'll cover some of the technical stuff here, and then I'm going to talk about some of the people stuff afterwards here. So really, what does your policy need to cover, and how it needs to be very you need to be very, very articulate. And when you talk policy, I kind of talk a little more about training. You're going to be training your people, and this is going to get a little bit. This is going to be, is it cybersecurity, Bill? Is it BYOD? I say nowadays it's both. They're coming together now, and it's really more of educating and training your workforce and understanding, hey, you are a target. People will come after you for not only your personal, but what you can get them from a company standpoint. And really a couple things you got to realize. Remember, what devices are acceptable? And really thinking about that is, hey, I've got, and a lot of my customers are like, hey, we're a Windows shop, we're Microsoft. All my employees want to bring Macs, Apples, AirPads, all that stuff. And I'm like, that's fine. But when they call up and they have a support issue, how are you going to support it? Or are you not going to support it? And how are you going to make sure the tools are there? And a while back, there were some challenges with some of that. It's kind of moved over, but I see that all the time, especially with consultants. I work in the consulting space, and a lot of them are like, hey, I got my Mac here. And the customer's like, I don't know how to support you on that. I don't know how you connect on that. So you tend to see that quite a bit. Applications as well, especially when you're on the phone, using an iPhone or the Google, Samsung, any of those, what kind of applications should not be using and all that good stuff. Because remember, it's the individual's phone. So you have that balance of, from 9 to 5, it's your product. It's the company's device. At 5:01, it's theirs. It reverts back to the employee. And if they want to go do something with it, what rights do you or don't you have? And how do you protect yourself? Or do you just kind of do some other things with it? It's very challenging. Who owns the data on the device? Now, if I've got my own laptop here, which I do, and I have customer files and stuff like that, who owns that? How do I encrypt that? How do I protect that? It gets almost to the second question, and a lot of customers have this on a device, and they actually install it a lot on their iPhones. My wife has it on hers, where if you're using that iPhone for your company email or your company communications, and it gets lost or anything like that, you call your company can wipe that phone, clean that phone out. That's kind of one of those things where there's a cost to that. And employees are like, well, I don't know if I want to lose my phone. I don't want to do this. I don't want that. But it really gets into the conversation and where that goes. Antivirus and firewall software. You don't know how many times I've seen and been places where they're like, oh, yeah, we should tell our employees to put antivirus on their computer. Yeah, you should. And, oh, they put this one on, but it was like, well, Dave didn't want to spend the money, so it was free, so he got the free one. And then he got broken into, didn't he? Yes, he did. And then that data came up, and now we've got we got a ransomware on our computers, which is a famous thing going around. I do some work in the government as well, and state governments, school districts actually are very concerned about that scenario. The bigger two here is, hey, I don't have a password on my laptop, or I have the password 1234. Well, that's to the laptop when you sign on to the laptop before you get onto the network. Well, what rights and how do we enforce that as a company, saying, hey, we'd like you to have a better one. Can we put software on your PC to do that? Can we monitor that being done? Oh, wait a second, whole scenario there. Keeping up with security patches for your device, that's the biggest one. I give sessions all around the area on how do you patch your systems, because a lot of times there are 0 days. You've probably heard of the 0-day virus, and those do happen. And if you're phishing or doing some, which phishing can turn into ransomware, those are tough. But basic, just patching devices, your security monitors on your routers, your wireless router. Yeah, people drive by, bounce it in, not a problem there. And then the bigger one that we get into a lot of, and depending on where you are in the world and depending on where your employee is what monitoring is done, or what monitoring you as a company can do on that device. Now, if your employee is covered by GDPR or PIPEDA, which is the Canadian version of the General Data Protection Act, and to some degree CCPA and the California Protection Act, there are notices and restrictions, more notification you have to provide to that employee that you are doing that and how you're doing that. And really that comes into the policy and how you drive that. And again, I apologize, I do talk fast. being from New York. So any questions? I can't see the screen right now. I'll grab them afterwards. But the key thing, and people like bring me in and say, hey, Bill, we need to write a policy. We need to train the people on this. And I said, that's fine. But in anything, with any of this, it starts with the people. It's not the technology. It's how you prevent that user. Now, so I'm going to get in a little bit of cybersecurity talk here. How do you prevent that user from checking before they click on that link? Or, hey, checking before you open that email attachment? It really has to start with the people. And I can create a policy and you can have your employee sign off on it, and then you can throw all that software on there, and it's not going to be nearly as effective as if you work together with it. And I really, training and awareness is the key to any successful security policy. And again, it kind of, you start to see these bleed into what's an overall cybersecurity or a policy for the company versus what is a BYOD policy. And really, you're going to just send out a document. It's not going to work. I don't know. I've had a successful business practice on, hey, we got hacked. People call me up. I'm like, well, yeah, well, we have this policy. I'm like, yeah, it didn't work, did it? No, because the person just didn't understand how to go about it. And really, the key in awareness is, it's key in the training. You got to keep it informative, keep it short. I can tell stories about gas pipes all day long if you want. I can talk about, you know, the gas pipe, the Colony gas pipe. It happened also about 11 years ago in the Ukraine. It's very similar. Shut down a heating pipeline in the Ukraine, the southern part. Same attack. Probably not the same people, but same attack, same concept. So it comes over and over. So there's stories that can be told. And you can't have it be a one and done. You can't say, hey, we taught you, we're done, boom. Awareness, education, and this is where I find people like myself, IT security people, we're usually not the best at it. We just don't do it well. I get up there, I teach, I train, but really that balance on where it sits, well, obviously IT is your group, but I find training organizations, if you're in a lot of, I do a couple things with some banks and they have some training organizations. HR, you know, that enablement organizations I find are much better at this than what I would say is your traditional security people. And with that said, Brett, I'll give it back to you.